Okay, so I want to end by talking about another property of DNA polymerases. And this is really the reason we're talking about this assay, which is something called processivity. Anybody know a definition for processivity? Sort of, yeah. It is sort of how efficiently a polymerase works is a good way of thinking about it. But I'm going to give you a more precise definition of processivity. So processivity has to do with reactions that work on polymers, or that synthesize polymers. And it is most simply defined as the number of, let's see, let me make sure I get this just right. Enzyme cycles per polymer binding. Okay, so this is a property of enzymes that act on polymers. Okay? For a DNA polymerase, this is the number, so this is the general definition, and this is the DNA polymerase definition. It's the number of DNTPs added per primer template junction binding event. Okay, so why do we care about this? So let me give you a couple of numbers. So the first one is it takes DNA polymerase approximately 1 second to bind a primer template junction in solution. Okay? That's a diffusion-controlled reaction. Okay? In contrast, it takes DNA polymerase approximately 1 millisecond to add a DNTP once bound. Okay? So what that means is that if you have a DNA polymerase that's already bound to a template, in the time it takes another DNA polymerase to bind to a new template, it can add 1,000 base pairs. Okay? Now, okay, so obviously if you just want to make a lot of DNA, you'd like to have a processive DNA polymerase. Okay? And in fact, what you find is that DNA polymerases have widely varying processivities. And it varies based on the function of the polymerase. So for example, DNA repair polymerases, which typically only need to repair very short patches of DNA, have low processivity. So their processivity will be something like 10 to 20 base pairs per primer template junction binding. In contrast, the DNA replicating, or the genome DNA replicating polymerases have essentially unmeasurable processivity. Okay? The largest artificial templates we can easily make are 50,000 base pairs, and they're greater than 50,000 base pairs per primer template junction binding. Okay? So that's why we'd like to know this about a polymerase, because it starts to tell us what kind of job that polymerase might be good at.